there's a bit of a story that comes from the 1930s about a bit of an eccentric person named William Height, who apparently made his mark as what was known back then as a rainmaker. And he also, back then, like around that time, you had a lot of people going around, like Southern California and those areas were experiencing a historical drought. And so you had this kind of wave of, like probably
mad scientists.
Mad scientists, 90% snake oil salesmen, whatever, but people who were promising that they could bring rain to the water-starved crops and places of the all the little places in Southern California. So you had this one specific person, William Height, who invented what he termed the electrodome.
Dope name.
Man, I'm not doing it.
Better than.
So now he claimed that his device would generate negative electrical currents in the atmosphere and create a pulsating direct current from the ground to the sky, therefore pulling down, like his reason, his explanation was to be able to create rain, because you would, the negative and positive charges would like attract each other, so you're essentially just like pulling rain out of the sky, as if you're following along with his reasoning. And so this would allow people who were utilizing his device to create rain, displace fog, and even prevent frost from forming on crops. So basically being able to manipulate moisture in any form.
So it's nothing like the Thunderdome.
No, which was a little bit disappointing. Disappointing when I found that.
Let down, man. Mad Max is...
So this is like the early stages of like cloud seeding. HAARP. Weather
earlier stages of what some people would term, like this was like proto-HAARP right here. Weather control by technological means. Not necessarily chemical means like rain, like cloud seeding, but actual ionizing radiation or electrical currents or ionizing currents that would allow him to manipulate the atmosphere in such a way as to produce rain.
You're right at like the end of Tesla's, all his research in AC currents and stuff, like playing with the ionosphere, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, now you have this mad scientist. You now have a mad scientist in a laboratory in Turnbull County, or Turnbull Canyon.
Right, so he got some financial support from a citrus farmer named John Dodrell, and so that allowed William to be able to build. I mean, it wasn't enough to build exactly what he wanted. I think he wanted to build multiple towers, but he got enough to build one big one, is what he figured. One big one's better than a bunch of little tiny ones in his mind. And so he built this old one, which was also, he saved a bit of scrap, because he based it off of an old existing oil tower that was located there in Turnbull Canyon. Now, the laboratory was sitting on an 80-foot tower, so you can kind of imagine this. The electrodome reached about 125 feet from the ground to the sky. So this huge, big tower sitting out there. And it's said that his final test of his experiment happened on New Year's Eve. At the strike of midnight in 1932. And then after that, William Height was never heard from again.
Because he went back to the future, baby.
Yeah, right. He turned himself into Bulkhead Bill.
He's fused into Turnbull.
Philadelphia experiment style. Maybe we've got it all wrong. In the Philadelphia experiment, they didn't have a Tesla coil. It was actually a fucking electrodome.
So, William Height is essentially lost to history after that. He was pretty much...
Because he went back to the future. Same shit.
And it's pretty cool, because I kind of looked into because I was like, the weather manipulation. I was like, man, that's pretty sweet. And I guess there is a company called Australian Rain Technologies, and they claim to use this guy as like they're not like using his work, but like that was what inspired them. And they use charged like aerosol particles that can be turned on and off in the ionosphere to create rain. That's cool. And they just finished like a 10-year study, and they pretty steady. They can increase rainfall by about between like 15 and 20% in a region using this technology. It's like these charged,
That's fucking sweet.
charged aerosol particles into clouds, and then when you like, I guess like it's some type of wireless energy. And when they turn them on, it has like a 15 to 20% chance of increased rainfall, up to 90%. But that's like 1%. It can be 90%. But like so, this cloud seeding. I guess it's been like 70, 80 years of them claiming like, oh yeah, we can create rain, we can do this, we can do that. But now it looks like they actually can in some ways because they kind of use this technology at the Olympic Games in Beijing to decrease smog. But they filter out the smog by making it rain, but you can only do it over a small region.
I feel like there's other ways to do that too.
Yeah, maybe change from coal power. I just thought it was interesting that there is like
Come
this.
on. It's not that crazy.
How did he afford to build this tower, man? Like, did he use his own money or did he have a bunch of investors?
No, he had the investor. Like I said, he had there was a citrus. Most of the funds came from a citrus farmer, John Dodro.
Oh,
So it didn't
big
work. And
citrus.
he fucking disappeared after
No,
this.
man, he was sucked into another company that he
Gotta get the
opened
fuck
up.
out of here.
I don't
Spend
know,
all
this-
money.
This is big citrus written all over
The
it.
massive amounts of electrical energy, ionizing electrical energy that he used in the electrodome ripped open a portal between our world and the nether world, and he was sucked into it, never going to see it again.
I mean,
Is that hard to understand?
It is.
Like,
It
draw a
is.
picture?
It is weird that a guy of this stature who is working on something like this that is such like a prominent part of history in this time essentially disappears complete. Like that seems very strange. Like that's a
easy to disappear. Go to a different country and no one's ever gonna fucking.
yeah, but someone would be like, you think someone like this would be like, and then he moved away. Like from him being
No, but
like
he wanted to
doing-
disappear. That's the thing, is he wanted to fucking disappear, so he disappeared. I feel like
He's-
back then, for sure, you could disappear.
It's just for me. It's strange that it's like he does a test at the stroke of midnight, which is a weird fucking time to do a test.
Agreed.
And then he's never seen or heard from again in history.
He's embarrassed. Spent all this money, failure. Fucking Mexico.
So now,
Tijuana.
after this, you start getting, out throughout the Depression. There's also tales of other things kind of happen. This is when you got to get a bit more sinister happenings going on within Turnbull Canyon, and people kind of describing that there is some type of dark force which has taken up residence within the canyon itself, and it seems to draw evil to it.
I got a spooky one right around this time. Great Depression. Want some of this?
Yeah.
Because it's really spooky.
Please don't talk about the Great Depression because that's depressing.
It starts. It gets super fucked up though. Not only are people broke, but people are dying. So around the same time, obviously desperate times, Americans all over the country were struggling to make ends meet. People died of starvation, disease, and basically were living in complete despair. It was during these bleak years that people from, how do you say that? Puente Hills began to hear strange rumors
Jesus.
of the new
What
residents
the
of
hills?
Turnbull
What the
Canyon.
hills?
A large
How would
group
I
of
say
men and
that?
women
What
with
the-
no children wearing black robes.
What the
They were numerous
Yeah,
and
what the
organized,
hills?
and their business was
No, it's
horrifying.
Puente.
One witness
Puente.
carefully sneaking up on the camp.
What's the difference? Puente. So, hard accent, Puente Hills. Puente Hills. Puente. 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 Puente Hills. What? Puente Hills. Where is that card? Oh, it's over at Puente Hills? That's over at Puente Hills? Oh, it's over at Puente Hills? I would say Puente. Puente.
Satan is good. Satan is your friend. I want to kill everyone. After a time, the chanting suddenly increased.
That's in
in
English.
intensity.
They didn't understand English.
Enchilada.
The cross was hoisted
Get an enchilada.
upright, the child
Enchilada.
struggling but unable
How
to
the fuck
cry
do I
out
say it?
through the rough cloth that had been stuffed into
What's
his
the
mouth.
soup that I like?
Pulling the cross back down and then hoisting it
Menudo.
up the other way,
Menudo.
the townsmen finally truly
Menudo.
realized what was happening.
Menudo. 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 Yeah, fuck. I have a Mexican.
The bolters
I
struck
can
the boy
pronunciate
again and again,
words.
blood flying out from every direction.
What else do I say?
Eventually, their fury subsided, and so did the blows. Peering close,
beat
the
him.
Pointer Hills rested.
call it a cucumber.
Breathed a sigh of
I beat
relief
him.
to see the boy was still breathing. But what happened next, he could never forget. They took him away. They simply removed the boy, stuffing him in a
Limon.
large sack and tossing him roughly into a wagon.
Limon.
The
Limon.
man returned down to tell the tale, but he was not believed until some month later, when a rash of kidnappings
Corona.
and disappearances struck
Now,
the air.
Corona. Let me get a
So they're also said like around this time of the Great Depression, there was like a huge uptake in children being abandoned or put up for adoption, and they theorized that these cults were the ones that were adopting these kids, or maybe even just kidnapping them from the orphanages and using them for ritual sacrifice.
Well, it's one of those things too. In this time, what?
It's the ghost. It's the ghost talking.
It's in this time you have all these people that there's great despair everywhere. So it's for me it's not a reach for these people, especially in this time, to think that maybe these kind of practices or sacrifices or stuff like these kind of rituals might change favor for someone.
No. What? No.
What do you mean?
This isn't fucking Roman times where you gotta sacrifice a bull to get a good harvest. This is like fucking late 1800s.
It's like 1930s.
Sorry, the 1930s, where you think it's fine to sacrifice a child for economic gain? Like,
Maybe-
what are you
maybe-
talking
maybe
I'm
about?
some of
just
these
saying,
people-
desperate times call for desperate
Sacrifice.
measures.
No.
Call for ritual sacrifice.
Sacrifice?
That is one of the allegations.
God forbid our viewers just start plummeting one time. We stop making some Patreon money. Brain's like, well, guys, I guess we gotta kill a kid.
Don't
How
think
do you think we got our
Sacrifice
Spotify deal?
one. Yeah, no shit.
And why do you think that we had a change of conscience? Didn't do another one and we lost it? So
Yes.
that's our fault.
So that is also one of the legends that is attributed to the malevolent energies or the malevolent appeal of Turnbull Canyon. Now you also apparently have, which was actually a real thing, and you can. This was in the news at the time. In 1952, you had an an actual airplane crash happen in Turnbull Canyon.
Right into the canyon.
This was in April 18th, 1952, and it was reported that LA International Airport Control Tower had lost contact with a Flight 416 that was being piloted by Lewis Powell. Now, around 10 a.m. that same morning, a rancher named Hayden Jones was driving around the Whittier Heights ranch when he saw smoke rising from the hills. Now he was concerned, of course, as being seeing black smoke in this area, potentially a forest fire or something like this. He climbed up a hill to find flaming pieces of steel that had smashed into the hillside of the canyon. Now, those who inspected the crash site said the plane seemed to have burst into flames on impact. And the local ranchers didn't actually spot the burning plane until at 10 a.m. that morning because the fog had been exceedingly heavy that morning. So it had actually concealed the smoke within that fog.
That fog was charged with the time-traveling energy from William Height.
Exactly.
A total of 29 people were on board that flight 416. And
They were all orphan children.
and all the passengers were said to have died at the moment of impact. Like they said that it was difficult to identify a lot of the bodies because they had been burned and pretty much to a crisp.
Well, and like mashed into the fucking ground like a bunch of little bulkhead bills. Like they were one with the canyon at this point.
So this is where you
More
get
like
some
Canyon
people saying that
Kyles.
perhaps something had pulled them into the canyon. Like how would you crash so hard into a canyon like that deliberately?
Well, here, like this is kind of how they summarize what happened. So when the plane, so right around 2:30, they were talking to air control because the fucking crazy thick fog that you were already talking about that actually hid the plane, right? So nobody really saw it until 10 o'clock the next day. So they were descending into Burbank, when they were radioing with ATC and were like, listen, we can't see fuck all. This is like sketchy. So air traffic control rerouted them to LAX. So they were rerouting to LAX, and it seemed like the fog was starting to follow them. Now, right around, like Dan was saying, 3 o'clock, air traffic control reported losing all communication with them. And around the same time, the residents around the Turnbull Canyon area reported hearing that the fucking plane was scraping the fucking rooftops of the local residents. Like, they heard it shake their fucking houses, being like, what the hell? So it turns out, because they were initially prepping for fucking descent into Burbank, they forgot to retract the landing gear. So as the landing gear was still down, apparently the pilot tried to go underneath the fog, not knowing that he was in a canyon, right? So he descended under the fog to be able to get a better look at what was happening. One of the landing gear got caught on the canyon itself, causing the fucking plane to spiral into the fucking side of the the canyon. They basically ripped off a huge chunk of the canyon with the wing. There's like a giant laceration still to this day in the canyon, and then sent them straight down into the ground.
So you're saying something pulled them into the canyon?
Gravity vortex from the canyon pulled on the lowered landing gear, clipping the top of the canyon, sending them into a gravity.
It was the ghost.
Right. So you're saying the dark fog.
It's a ghost of the ancient Minestrone native tribe that pulled them down.
It seems weird to me that a plane would risk traveling at that low of an altitude in the first place. That they're clipping their fucking landing gear.
Well, but they shouldn't have. For the big problem, they would have been fine if the landing gear wasn't down. Apparently, that was the big problem. And they had no
close.
idea.
That's pretty
like
close.
Honestly, how big's landing gear?
I'm not gonna disagree with you. But
the pilot's like, oh, I didn't know I had the fucking landing gear down there. And gives us 3
well,
feet
we
of
don't know
clearance.
because he's fucking dead.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I'm like, that's dangerously low.
Yeah, but he had no idea he was in a canyon, right?
It's
like that was
the demons of the canyon created the fog. The gravity.
Well, they had a couple of questions though, because like again, this same pilot was actually supposed to be pulled off from working at doctor's order because he had a heart attack a month before this happened. So they wondered possibly did he have a jammer while he was mid-flight?
Well, usually a co-pilot though.
There was two.
Or
and then
this fucking weird machine. What's Height's name or whatever is Billy Height? His machine fucked with the instruments because this person flew too close to the canyon. So maybe he didn't realize how low he was because whatever this fucking he was fucking around with this radio tower was fucking up with this guy's contraptions.
Yes, another time travel of the Electrodome fucked with this plane.
Another weird thing too is, I guess 3 years prior to this crash, the pilot who was piloting the plane invented this navigation tool that was specifically made for navigating through adverse weather conditions, including fog. And he brought that to the Aeronautics Commission. Does that sound right? Mm-hmm. Let's pretend that's right.
Sounds right.
Commission brought it forward to get it patented and made, and they fucking turned their noses up at it. Like, yeah, no, we have no interest in this. And then so the guy's family stood there with a picture of the designs of his fucking invention, saying like claiming that this would have saved that crash, and like had a picture of it in the fucking paper after the plane crash. And like this should have saved our father's life and all 28 other people that were part of this plane.
Crazy.
Do they now use it?
Bizarre. I don't know.
I'm sure they got some pretty sophisticated instruments for detecting.
Because what is it? This was 1952.
Yeah, we're not long after commercial air travel had really begun.
So now you have that going on. You had an entire 29 souls perishing and flaming steely death in Turnbull Canyon, but also apparently you have stories of an insane asylum, because what spooky place would be complete without stories and local legends of an insane asylum being somewhere in the location. Now this insane asylum was said to have been put behind, and the only evidence that people point to is there is a mishmash chain link fence that
glowing
seals
red,
off a part.
glowing red with molten lava flowing through it, marking hell.
If by molten lava you mean like overgrown with local vegetation and grass and prior
Thorny
Venus flytraps.
Yeah, thorny,
Fucking
savage,
poison ivy.
savage-looking plants that would
Venus
eat.
fly traps, I know only grow in like a certain place in North Carolina, I think, actually.
Yeah, and hell.
And Turnbull Canyon.
Yeah, and hell, I mean, I suppose. So, this insane asylum that is sealed off, like this gate is apparently been given the name. Is it the Hell's Gate?
Hell's
Or
Gate.
Gates of Hell?
Gates of Hell.
Things like that. And they're saying that
Hell
perhaps
knows.
like, this insane asylum that had been there had been a place of course, abusive experiments, the places where the insane had gone to essentially die and disappear.
Lobotomized.
Lobotomized, and apparently burned down in the 1940s. But that wasn't the end. Now, sometime around 1962, as the tale goes, there was a group of two teenagers that were partying in the ruins of this insane asylum, and one of them decided to explore a bit deeper into the insane asylum, and he came upon a long dormant electroshock device. Thinking that I guess it looked pretty neato, he managed to interact with the device, and apparently it pumped several thousand volts through his body, and he died.
It's like the accounts of that one too. It's like he put it on his head, and the second he basically touched all of the electrodes and they all made contact, his friends stood there as they watched this kid barbecued, like straight up barbecued, skin melting, like terrifying.
We're talking Raiders. We're talking Raiders here.
Yeah,
Fucking
Raiders,
Nazi
like
face melt.
terrifying, like watching someone just receive an unimaginable amount of electricity pulse through their body.
People don't really melt. To be honest with you, they don't.
They
Well,
melt
I don't
on
think
the-
it
on the
melted, but
inside.
he melted inside out, and it was like I imagine it's not a fun thing to watch. Someone get that kind of electricity go through them.
Is it like there's still power going to this place?
That's what I was gonna.
How long have
That's
it
what I was
been?
gonna ask.
Yeah,
Is this,
supernatural power, spooky power.
it's charged by a ghost battery with thousands
Electro.
of volts.
Did you not?
Yeah,
we just
It's
talked.
the power of the electrodome through space time, coming back to this time, zapping this person.
Can't argue with that. So at this point, Dan, because with the stories I heard, that at this point in time, this asylum was just the foundation was left, really. Like it had burnt down.
Yes. Yeah, it had burned down. Well, they were in the ruins. Like I said, they were in the story goes that they were in the ruins of this place, hanging out, smoking
Yeah, but-
cookies. I don't know.
So it was just like a charred fucking little electroshock.
Because that's exactly where you want to get high, is in a fucking abandoned sailing asylum. Like, come on, people. I guess there hadn't been a lot of horror movies.
Hey,
back then
dude,
that
a
made
bunch
that
of teenage
trope,
Zells?
This is
Bunch of
this is
teenage Zells
before
would be all
this is
over that.
before getting high in
Zell?
creepy places was.
Well,
a movie
we
trope.
used to not even get high, but like by Zell's parents' house, there's like all these sketchy ass caves,
Oh yeah.
and when you go in those caves and you turn on a light, all that's on the wall, 420.
Sketchy ass.
It's
Yeah. Case 420.
So it's like
bunch of
before it
random
was
other shit.
legal, like people would try to find all sorts of places to get high.
Then that checks out. That'd be like that's the one
Yeah.
place that you'd want to go is a haunted insane asylum because nobody would go there
Yeah, no one's gonna bug you.
except the ghosts.
This place is burnt to a crisp. All that remains is the foundation, concrete foundation, and then in the perfect area there is a intact electro helmet or probe, whatever.
Shockometer.
And then connected to that is a hidden underground battery that's stored charge for all these years. That's what's happened here.
Yes.
I liked your whole fucking Thunderdome explanation more, though. I'll be honest.
Okay, so it's
So-
this device is charged through the ionosphere through space-time by the electrodome. This guy
That's
electro.
it.
There's a lot of big words there, so it has to be real.
I like it.
So you have some of these, perhaps, suspect or legendary encounters that have happened in Turnbull Canyon, but actually Turnbull Canyon has been the site of a few actual tragedies.
Murder!
Indeed, murder. In this one, at least one of those deaths was the tragic death of Gloria Gaxiola, which she was a 17-year-old girl from Baldwin Park, and she apparently had been shot in the head brutally, then dragged behind a car, killing her. If the shot in the head wasn't enough, in 2002, right along Turnbull Canyon Road in Hacienda Heights, and then police actually couldn't solve the murder for 5 years, despite their best efforts. And then finally a witness stepped forth would actually help them crack the case. And when they put out an article in one of the newspapers talking to some of the members of her local church, and they were talking to some, like one of them where her brother was a pastor. Another pastor was talking about how Turnbull Canyon was a bit known as this kind of place that was kind of infamous for being involved in things like like dark happenings there. Like they identified it as a place of some place that you would find the devil. Is where is this thing.
They've got the gates of hell there. Of course. What do you think's behind the gates of hell? It's the fucking devil, right?
Yep.
And kind of backing that up, one of the newspaper articles had a quote from a retired Los Angeles County firefighter who said he had worked for 13 years out there on Turnbull Canyon Road, and he said that it was a good place where they would often find the bodies of people who had been executed or bodies had been dumped off by local gangs.
What better place? It's the perfect location for that.
We do know now, though, that the canyon, it may taketh, but it also giveth back.
Zombies?
We have
Yeah.
kind of, maybe, we don't know. I mean, you know what? There's two options here. This lady, Christina Martinez, is either, like Dan said, a zombie, or she's a very distant relative of Rasputin. Those are the only two things that make fucking sense.
Yeah.
So, listen to this story.
Is there a Hatunga casino, or are we sure?
No.
Oh, casino. No.
Why the fuck are we talking about casinos?
Well, because you said to give it back. I thought maybe.
Casinos never get back.
Do the casinos deal with life?
I think sometimes.
It depends.
We'll see here. All right, so Christina Martinez struck it big at the Hatunga Casino on August 4th, 2009. She was at a party with her boyfriend and a group of friends. When the group of friends were decided to go home early, offered Martinez a ride home. She said yes. Boyfriend decided to stay at the party. So on their way home, they decided to stop at the beach first. Martinez said she didn't find anything odd because she had been going to the beach late at night with these individuals several times before. It was when the group started driving north toward Whittier that she realized something was wrong. But when she asked where they were going, nobody replied. Then all of a sudden, one of the guys in the front seat whispered to another to grab the rope and tie her hands. That launched a physical and verbal struggle where Mendoza, one of the perpetrators, and Meraz eventually pinned her down, binding her wrists with a rope. Mendoza pulled out 2 syringes, she said, and jammed one and then the other into her neck. The second syringe was pulled out several times and pushed back into her neck, she said. It appeared Mendoza was reloading it, though she didn't know with what. She described feeling a rush of heat and then choking and coughing and struggling to breathe as she became nauseous. The driver drove to the Turnbull Canyon Road in North Whittier and parked his green 2-door Mitsubishi Eclipse on the shoulder, Martinez said. Once parked, Meraz grabbed her hair and shoved her head out of the open passenger door, while Alea then pulled her out by her head as she stumbled. She was knocked to the ground and then simultaneously beaten and kicked by the 3 men. She then blacked out briefly after she was hit in the back of the head with a very heavy